Let's take a look at our standard 2RL 2.4. Describe how words and phrases, such as regular beats, alliteration, rhymes, repeated lines, supply rhythm and meaning in a story, poem, or song. Let's look at that word in red, describe. When you describe, it's like showing or telling things. So we're going to show or tell how words and phrases, such as alliteration and repeated lines, supply meaning in a story. Let's get started. Oh, welcome, wondrous boys and girls. Today is Wednesday, and I am eating a wonderful, watery, washed watermelon. Wow. In today's lesson, you will learn about alliteration and repeated lines and how they add meaning to a story. Alliteration. Remember when I was eating the watermelon? Well, let's look back at what I said. Welcome, wondrous boys and girls. Today is Wednesday, and I am eating a wonderful, watery, washed watermelon. Wow. Did you see what I did there? Many of the words that I said started with the W sound for the letter W. That's called alliteration. Alliteration is what we call a literary device. With alliteration, a phrase will have many words that start with the same letter or sound. Alliteration gives poems, phrases, and stories rhythm and meaning. And when we say poems have rhythm, it means that they almost sound like a song. Let's take a look at a story, Some Smug Slug. In the story, we will see examples of alliteration used throughout the story. As I read this story, look for ways alliteration is used. Slowly, the slug started up the steep surface. Stringing behind it, scribble sparkling like silk. One summer Sunday, while strolling on soil, with its antenna signaling, a slug sensed a slope. As I'm reading these first two pages, I'm noticing that a certain sound is repeated. Do you know what sound that could be? If you said the sound S or the letter S, then you are correct. Alliteration is used in this story by using the letter S and the sound S. Remember, alliteration is when the use of words that begin with the same letter and sound. Next, let's talk about repetition. I said next, let's talk about repetition. Repetition, which is also known as repeated lines in our standard. What is repetition? Repetition is also a literary device. It is when words and ideas are repeated to show that something is important. Repetition also gives poems, phrases, and stories rhythm and meaning. Let's take a closer look at repetition or repeated lines by looking at a familiar story, The Three Little Pigs. The Three Little Pigs. Once upon a time, three little pigs left their mother and their home in order to seek their own fortunes and to build their own houses. The three little pigs gathered materials for their houses. The first little pig chose to build his house from straw, and the second little pig chose to build his house from sticks, and the third little pig chose to build his house from bricks. Suddenly, the big bad wolf came upon the first little pig's house. He knocked on the door. Little pig, let me come in, or I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down, called the wolf. The little pig felt safe in his house, so he shouted back, Not by the hair on my chinny chin chin. So the wolf huffed and he puffed and he blew the house down. The little pig escaped and ran to his brother's house of sticks. Now we know from reading this story before that some of the lines are repeated, such as little pig, let me come in, and I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house down. We also know that not by the hair of my chinny chin chin from the little pigs is also a repeated line throughout the story. This is an example of repeated lines in a story. Think about how they show meaning of the story, or show meaning in the story. By now, boys and girls, we know how to describe repetition and alliteration in a story and how they give meaning to a story. Oh, sorry guys for slurping my scrumptious strawberry smoothie. Okay, let's review. So, repetition is repeated words and ideas. And a lot of times they are repeated because they want to show you that it's important in a story. With alliteration, remember it can be two words that have the same beginning sound, just like we looked at earlier with the letter S in the story. Now it's time to show what you know with our independent practice. Go ahead and take out your Ready Reading book and turn to page 230. Let's get started.